This is my nearly finished latest project. Now, if the cabinet looks slightly familiar, it's because it was the Goodman's Module 80. Now, I did make a video of this earlier, and the conclusion was, well, since then really, that it wasn't worth fixing because virtually all the resistors were out of spec. I'm not sure about the capacitors, didn't get that far, and the FM tuner wasn't working properly, and I didn't think, in all honesty, I'd ever get it working. So, and it was this kind of product that it wasn't that wonderful in its day, so it's certainly nothing that would be worth anything, both acoustically or financially, if I was to spend the rest of my life changing virtually every component. So what I've done, I've turned it into an integrated amplifier, including a preamp, and I'll go over what's good and what's not so good, where I've made some mistakes. And yes, I know it's hard to believe that I've made mistakes, but I have. Right, first of all, a look at the front panel. Now, these are both volume controls, and the reason there's two volume controls is because I wanted this amplifier to accept a very wide range of input levels. And basically, the left-hand potentiometer is on the preamp, which you'll be surprised to hear is using a 5532. And the output of that then goes into the main volume, which is coupled to the power amplifiers. Now, for most application, this pot will be on full and you'll control the volume from this one. But if you've got a very high level of input, you'd probably turn that down somewhat and then use this. It's basically so that the main volume control has a sensible range, i.e. normal listening level here, pretty loud round about 1 o'clock. Also on the front panel are these two green LEDs, and they basically monitor the high voltage from the main power supply. One is on the positive rail and one is on the negative rail. And so at a glance I can tell if a fuse is blown on one side or something like that. It's just a reassuring thing to have two separate LEDs. On the right hand side of the front panel, it's not quite complete, as you can see. I'm waiting for a control knob similar to the other two, but with a white line on it to show where this is pointing. And you can see there are three blue LEDs, and one will correspond to input 1, input 2 and input 3. And on the right hand side immediately is an on-off switch, which at the moment, first mistake, is wired wrong way round. The LED, well actually it's not an LED, it's a neon, is on all the time. It still switches the amplifier on and off, but I've obviously connected the supply to the wrong terminals, so that's got to be sorted. Just before we leave the front panel, if you recall from the Module 80 video previously, the front panel had an FM tuner scale and all sorts of control knobs on it. Now I'm still using the same front panel, but what I've done, I've got a piece of aluminium, or aluminum if you prefer, and I've cut a piece out and put it over the original front panel and sprayed it black. Starting our look round inside, I have used this huge 500 watt, genuine 500 watts, not Chinese watts. It just runs cold, and if you recall again from a previous video, I've also wound a 12 volt winding, which you can't see from this particular shot, but I've shown it again previously, and that powers the loudspeaker protection circuit. Feeding this transformer, I'm using this delay and surge limiting board, which again I've reviewed in a previous video. When you actually turn this amplifier on, it actually makes the lights flicker in the room. So the surge on switching on that huge toroidal is enormous. So this provides about a 12, somewhere between, I guess, probably about 10 seconds gap. So when the power's on initially, these resistors, these four, are in series with the toroid and limit the current for the inrush, but just enough to remove that surge from the supply. And after that period, this relay clicks in and shorts out the resistors, so effectively the transformer's fed directly from the mains. This is our main rectifier and smoothing board. Shocky diodes mounted on heat sinks here, and 6 huge capacitors. With that transformer and this rectifier block, I'm getting 52 plus and 52 minus on this side. The amplifiers I've chosen are the L15 amplifiers. Again, I've reviewed them before. Now, a comment which I have to make on this is the heat sinks. Now, these are the original heat sinks that came with the kit, and that's one channel and that's the other channel. Now, I have criticized these in the past because the fins are this way and they should be that way, but I didn't have any heat sinks that would fit. Now, this is the problem that you get with anything that you build yourselves. Unless you can customize every single thing, a lot of things are a compromise, and this is a compromise. The big heat sinks that I had on my other amplifier won't fit on here. Believe it or not, the chassis isn't long enough. So I'm going to have to use these, and at normal and low listening levels, they don't get too hot. But if you're giving it a lot of stick, particularly if you're driving 4 ohms, the answer is I'm going to have to put some fan cooling on here. What I'm going to do is put a little computer fan here and here, and there's also going to be a little board inside which will monitor the temperature, so at normal listening level the fans don't come on at all, and when they start to get hot the fan will gradually ramp up until it's doing maximum cooling. But needless to say, I'm waiting for parts from you know where, so at the moment if I'm going to give it some stick I have to have a fan pointing in this direction. On the right hand side of the back panel I've got 4mm speaker terminals, left hand channel, right hand channel, and on this occasion I've got the mains cable going straight in, mainly because there wasn't space to put an IEC socket, but I don't honestly envisage that being an issue. Now on the left hand side, these are the 3 inputs. At the moment only one is wired because I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet, but these are the original 5-pin DIN as used on the module 80, and the reason I've left them in there is because there's not really enough space for 6 phono sockets, and to be honest I hate phono sockets. Again, if you've seen previous videos you'll have a very good idea why. This board is the loudspeaker turn on delay and also checking for volts on the speakers, on the speaker terminals. But I'm very pleased to say on testing on both these the residual output is about 1.2 millivolts on the left channel and 1.5 millivolts on the right hand channel. Moving up a little bit, this little 15-volt transformer, I can't get a very good shot of this, but you can just about see the little heat sinks on there, and it's just to provide 15 volts plus and minus. Again, I've used this transformer before and I've used this little board before, and all that does is feed the preamp, which is here, and dare I say it's one of these. I'm not going to tell you anything about that because I must have talked about this little preamp board. This one's all in bits, but I'm sure you remember it. That provides a gain of about 6 and is part of the preamp on the first potentiometer. Just right. That's what turns it into an integrated amplifier. The other thing we have on here are these fuses. There's 2, and they are in series with each of the amplifiers. So the top one feeds the positive volts, and the bottom fuse feeds the negative volts, and the same again on the other side. Looking at the extreme left, these fuses here are mains fuses. The top one feeds the low voltage transformer, and the bottom one, or the other way around, I can't remember offhand at the moment, but that is fused at 5 amps, and that feeds the main power transformer. They are original fuses that the original module 80 had. Now this is the number 2 mistake. I won't dwell on this, but if you may have spotted that this fuse is slightly, well actually it's quite a long way over to the right hand side. I don't know why I made that mistake, because I centre punched the marks that the chassis, and I drilled the holes, but for some reason or other I just made a mistake, and by the time I noticed it, it was impossible to fix. So don't look at that. Looking at the back of the chassis from the front, these are the 4mm sockets for the speakers, left and right. Now, one thing you'll notice at the moment, I don't have any markings on anything, because, dare I say again, I'm waiting for some white transfers to make up words so that I can put it on the front panel and show the various inputs and things like that. But I didn't want to hold this video up any longer, because I haven't put a video out for 3 weeks, and some of my subscribers, well, 3 to be precise, keep emailing me saying when am I going to put out some more videos. Just to show you what it will look like when it's finished, I have to say that at the moment the top is just resting on there. Clearly I haven't mounted it down or anything yet, but it's just a guide. I've done some work on the cabinet. Again, if you look at the original module 80, you'll see it looks somewhat better and darker. I haven't finished with the woodwork yet, but my skills in woodwork is even less than my skills with electronics. As I said, there's a few things still missing, which I won't hold up the video at this stage, but I've spent the last 5 hours listening to it in the main lounge, and I have to say it does sound very good. And again, there's nothing new in this that you haven't seen before, so I don't propose to stick it on the bench or anything like that, other than to say it produces just under 100 watts per channel into 8 ohms, and I haven't measured 4 ohms. Now, when I first put it on, I used a dim bulb because I'm a coward. Don't like smoke in the house, it's not good. And it all came to life. First of all, I switched it on with the 4 fuses out, so I was just powering up the transformer and all the low voltage stuff. And once I found that was going happily, I then put the fuses into one channel and made that work, took the fuses out of that channel and put them in the other channel, made that work, and then went off, big mistake, to make coffee. Had my coffee and came back full of confidence. Thought, right, we're going to throw some sounds at it now and see what it sounds like. And switched it on, one channel's not working. And I thought, oh dear, I don't understand how one channel works, and then you put the fuses in the other channel, and then the other channel works. But I'm embarrassed to tell you. Of course I took the fuses out and put them in the other channel, but because I had my coffee in between, I completely forgot to put the fuses in the second channel. So after I'd I don't know what the word is, I'm amazed at my inability to solve Small problems. Anyway, after I put the fuse in, it all sprang to life and I had a buzz on the preamp input, and I found I'd made a mistake and I'd earthed both ends of the screen cable. So after I'd unearthed both ends and just had one end earthed, it's now silent. No hum, no hiss, and it's stable. It doesn't seem to have any nasties or anything like that. So far I'm very happy. Now whether I shall end up using this instead of my L12, I don't know. This does appear to have a huge dynamic range, and I think it's largely because it's got a larger transformer than the L12, and it has that huge block of capacitors, which, well, the rails just don't sag. They just don't. It does appear to have more dynamic range, but I'm sure it's not the amplifier. I'm sure it's power supply, as it always is. Power supply maketh the amplifier.